don't think that gets thought about very much. And it has to do with, this idea of cohabitating and stuff like that. Um, I got married, but I'm really not a person who's going to run around and preach to everybody that they should get married, because I think marriage requires skill sets that some people just either don't have or don't want to have. Marriage is tough. And so I'm not a person that would, just like the same as my position on voting or going to college. I'm never a person to tell you not to vote or not to go to college or to get married or not to get married. I'm more of a person that's just likes to analyze the pros and cons of every decision, and acknowledging that your decision is going to vary based on what works for you, who you are and what you believe in, and how committed you are to the process, things like that. So anyway, here's what was on my brain today. It had to do with a story that I might have told you guys before, about a man that I kind of indirectly knew the man, and he was about my age, in his early 50s, and he liked to date the young girls because he had a little money in his pocket. He stayed in good shape. He's a good looking man. So he had a girlfriend that was about like 31 or 32 years old. And so this 31, 32-year old girlfriend, came to live with him. He took care, he took care of everybody. He didn't want to get married again, but he did. He said, "I love you like a wife, and I'm gonna be there for you just the same as I would if I was your husband." Things like that. And she believed him, and he followed through. He followed through on all of that. But one thing he forgot about, I think, is that sometimes people just die, and they die for no reason sometimes. I saw a video one time of like these people that were just doing regular stuff, and they would be talking on the talk show, and somebody would just fall over dead, or they would be I don't know, walking down the street, and then somebody just falls. I was in the airport yesterday. I kid you not, I was literally in the airport yesterday in Philadelphia. I came here for the Get Money Fest, and I heard a big thump, a big thud, and it was some guy that had just that just fell down for no reason. He just fell down, and his face hit the door, and it was pretty bad. And I was like, "Whoa, is he okay?" And because I remember there was a guy who was like, "Are you who I think you are?" And I said, "Yeah, I think I am." But look at that guy; he just fell down, and he couldn't get up, and eventually he got up and tried to act like everything was normal. But it made me just think about, like, I see stuff like that, and I think about that, right? And I think about how we're not really ready for that. And then actually, believe it or not, this all connects. I promise you. Um, I was in. I'm not gonna say it was an Uber. It was like a driving service. This brother walked up to me and offered me a ride, and I was a little skeptical and stuff. But it turned out he was the father of a guy that I knew, a sports agent named Andre Odom, and so we rode in his car, and in the car there was a single mother with three kids, and the single mother, who was about 44 years old, told me that she had three strokes. And I was like, wow, that's so crazy. That how life kind of works, that so many things can happen and you don't prepare. Like, a lot of us don't wake up every day thinking like, well, what's the worst that can happen? So anyway, all that made me think about just mortality, and how little, definitely from a financial, I'm gonna stick to the financial side of it, how we just don't really think about that. We assume that we're going to just be here and be functional and be in our right minds, and everything be okay. But then there's so many different things that happen. So let's go back to that story. So there was the guy, he's a 54-year-old player, and he had the young girlfriend that was about 32. And like in a lot of situations, you can imagine, his 31-year-old daughter wasn't exactly happy about him having a relationship with a girl she could have went to high school with. So she didn't like the relationship at all. But the father didn't, he just kind of did what he wanted to do. And so he had this girlfriend, and she was living with him. And because he was older, this is how a lot of these relationships work. A lot of times the older man might provide some stability financially and otherwise. So she lived with him. And I believe it was a love relationship. I believe they really loved each other. But they didn't want to get married, or he didn't want to get married. I don't know how she felt. So the daughter was not happy about this relationship, but she couldn't do anything about it. Well, the thing is, though, that in these relationships, people don't really think about like legal issues and stuff like that. There's not a conversation about like, okay, well, what happens if this occurs, or what happens if that occurs? And so here's what happened. And by the way, can y'all hear me? Are y'all able to give me a yes if you can hear me? I want to make sure. I normally say hello, and I'm sorry I didn't greet you. I was just processing things, so my apologies for that. Okay, thank you, Charlene and April and Darlene and Carolyn and Pacola and Edward and Hamid. I see you in there, and I just want to acknowledge you. So I apologize for not acknowledging. I should have done that. That's very rude of me. So anyway, all right. So okay. So basically, here's what happened. So one day he just has a stroke. He just gets whatever, I don't know if he was how healthy he was. I think he was in good physical shape, but like a lot of us, the greasy fatty food maybe caught up with him or whatever. So he has this stroke and he's in a coma. And while he's in a coma, the problem they had was that he paid all the bills. Right. So this girlfriend, and it was actually his mother too. He took care of his girlfriend and his mother. They were trying to figure out, like, how are we going to pay the bills? Now suddenly they're vulnerable. They're just out there. They're stuck. They don't have any income, nothing. He paid for everything. So they were kind of scheming on, like, how do we figure this out? So what they did was they realized a lot of the cell phones, you just put the phone up to somebody's face and the phone will open, right? So maybe they propped his eyes open. So I don't know what they did, but they put the phone to his face. They got into his phone. They went into the bank account and they were able to pull out enough money to pay the bills or whatever, a few $1,000s. So that was working for a while, I guess, as long as he was in a coma and nobody was asking too many questions. And so they were paying the bills. Well, one day he just dies. He's gone. He goes to heaven. And when he dies, that's when the state gets involved in your situation. That's when you have probate court and all these other things, all these people that are going to sort through every detail of your life to figure out where all your stuff is supposed to go. Well, the problem was that this man did not make any plans. He didn't have any plans for death. His only plan was what we were going to do Saturday night. He had plans for, what kind of sex they might be having. He maybe had plans for what the next trip they were going to take. But he didn't make any plans for the ultimate trip, the big trip where he's like floating up to heaven and he can't go back and do a do-over and make sure that he signs a couple of documents to make sure that he's taking care, that this woman is taken care of, this woman that he loves or says he loves, right? I think love is a verb. I don't think love is just a word or an emotion or a feeling. I think love is an act. If I love you, I'm going to do things to make sure that you're taken care of. If I could just say I love you, but that doesn't mean anything if there's no action attached to the words. It's almost like white people apologizing for slavery. The apology means nothing to me. You need to write my check. Give me my reparations check. Write that $14 trillion check, and then we'll be good. We're even, right? That's you truly repaired the situation. Okay, so love is the same way, right? So apparently no one ever taught him that part of love, or maybe he didn't care, or maybe he didn't think about it, or whatever, or maybe perhaps he fell into the trap a lot of men my age fall into, which is where you still think that you are 25 years old. You still think it's 1999. You still got it popping. Like we think we're hip and we're cool, and we don't realize how old fashioned we look because everything that we do now it was really cool in like 1999, but it's not cool in 2024. You look like an old man. It's whatever. Okay. So anyway, he dies, and there's no legal rights left for anyone like whatsoever. There's nothing legal that the court is bound to acknowledge or respect that gives her any legal rights whatsoever. She's sad. She's crying the loudest at the funeral. She's the one that knows all his secrets. She was closer to him than anyone else. She was even going with the mother to take care of him when he was in the hospital. Doesn't matter. Nobody cares. The court doesn't recognize it. The court's like, whatever. You don't exist. Basically, like you have these slang terms. You're the ride or die. You're the main chick. You're the girlfriend. Y'all been together X number of years. The court does not recognize any of that. The court says, were you his wife? If the answer is no, then please step aside, ma'am, so we can talk to the people that actually matter. And that's devastating. That's absolutely devastating. And I can only imagine how painful that would feel. Martin Luther King, for example, there was a lady, an older lady, she was from Kentucky, where I'm from, and I interviewed her years ago, and she swears that she was closer to Dr. King than Coretta was. She swears that she says she was with him when he got shot at the hotel. She was so sad she wanted to climb in the ambulance with him to do what any normal good girlfriend, wife, whatever would want to do, which is I want to go to the hospital with him because I'm worried that he might die, which he did. And literally 50 years later, she was still very bitter because she wasn't acknowledged on any level. right? Because she existed kind of in the shadows, right? And so I felt bad for the lady. I really did, assuming her story is true. Um, and so anyway, long story short, this lady's there. She's got no rights whatsoever, no access to any of his assets. Her opinion just doesn't exist. So who do they call in? Well, the person they call in who has all the power all of a sudden is the daughter. And that's the same daughter who hated your guts, the same daughter who thought you were a predator for dating her daddy. You were taking advantage of him. You were a gold digger. In her mind, that's what she sees, right? That's what happens in these relationships. When you get an older person with a younger person, everybody feels like somebody's being exploited, right? They feel like the old man's being exploited for his money, and that the only reason he wants to date a young girl is because he wants somebody he can control, right? So either way, somebody's getting exploited when really I've seen situations like that where both people kind of know what it is. Look, I'm 25, you're 45. The only, the part of what I expect is for you to bring some financial security in my insecure life. And then he's like, yeah, but the thing I expect you to do is to look good and not stress me out, and I'll pay your bills, right? That becomes so to me, it's not always exploitative, but then again, maybe it could be. I'm not here to judge that. I'm just here to say that this happens all the time, millions of times, all throughout history for 100,000 years. With that said, the daughter did not appreciate this relationship, so the daughter suddenly had all the power. Now, here's the deal. So let me tell you what happened. I'll tell you what happened, then I'm going to tell you what I see, and then I'm going to tell you some remedies. I like to tell if I tell the story, I'm going to tell you what the issues are, and then I'm going to give you a solution to it. I'm not going to just throw it out there for dramatic purposes. So the daughter, who hates the lady's guts, first thing she does is she gets the girl evicted from her house. So lady she's now homeless. She's like, "Ha ha, you bitch! Now you have nowhere to live. Now I'm gonna move into the house that you and my daddy lived in." Um, she then goes back and finds out when the probate people are doing the forensic accounting, they find out that thousands of dollars was pulled out of this account. So they go back and they go say, well, let's go find out where this money went. That's when they find out that she stole the money and she pulled it out. Okay. And so then the daughter calls the police to get the girl arrested, because she's a criminal. You're not my daddy's girlfriend. You're a thief now, right? So she goes to get her arrested, and I don't know how that part went, but I know that it was pretty ugly, and probably lots of legal fees and everything else. And the thing about it that probably upset this young lady the most is that I believe she really did love the man. And also, she knows that if he were alive, he would not approve of any of this. If he were alive, he would protect her from all these things. Now, by the way, this is a story now that I mentioned. I think I've mentioned this story to you guys before, but I wanted to bring it up again because we didn't go far enough in terms of laying out solutions you can put in place. So bear with me with this, okay? So basically, what I see in this situation as a finance professor, for just going back to theories and research that I remember going through in my doctoral program, is that there is a concept in finance called moral hazard. And moral hazard, to make it simple, really basically kind of means that there are power shifts that occur in our lives such that if you don't prepare for those power shifts, you can really screw yourself. So in this particular case, the power dynamic shifted. Before, it was those two in their cozy little relationship, and the daughter is an outsider. She can't do anything except sit there and be mad. Well, then suddenly when he dies, the power shifts from the daughter, or excuse me, from the father to the daughter. So that's a moral hazard issue. Now the daughter has all the power, and the daughter is going to come in, almost like a new president taking over the White House, and completely dismantle and disrespect every rule, every law, every process that you had in place before she got there. She's coming in with full burning torches and a sword and a machete and chopping down every single thing that y'all had that y'all believed was sacred. None of that matters anymore because the king is dead. Daddy's gone, right? And so with this moral hazard issue, they have a solution to the moral hazard issue in finance, and they call that optimal contracting. Now, optimal contracting basically is what it sounds like. Optimal, meaning like the best, like you optimize. Contracting, contracts, putting contracts in place to protect you in case the beast of moral hazard shows its ugly head. So in the event, so what does that look like in this situation? Well, it looks like this. It might look like the man saying, you know, because I love you and because I'm a real man who thinks strategically, I'm going to prepare us for the moral hazard problem with optimal contracting. I'm not just going to say I love you. I'm going to show you I love you by, now maybe I don't want to get married. Maybe marriage just isn't for me. I'm not mad about that because divorce rates are really high. Marriage is hard. Marriage, if you do it, make sure you do it right. Make sure you prepare, because it's not easy. But maybe I don't want to get married, but I do love you. So what I'll do is I will put my name on some documents to secure your rights in the event that something goes bad. And to me, I don't think that that's too much to expect. I really don't. Like if I was sitting there and I was talking to this young lady who says, "Oh well, he really loves me. He does very nice things for me." Blah blah blah. I would say, "Well, okay. Well then if he loves you, then have him show you that he loves you. Have him sign something. It doesn't have to be a marriage certificate, but is there anything he can sign that gives you rights? Because at this point, all you have are words, and talk is cheap. Words mean absolutely nothing. Feelings don't mean anything in the court of law. So basically, a few things that she could have done, that she could have gotten put in place to protect her legal rights might be the following. You have things out here, first off, with the healthcare part, some sort of healthcare proxy or medical power of attorney. That pretty much means that you're telling the courts that, look, if something happens to me and medical decisions need to be made on my behalf, this person can make those decisions. This person can come see me in the hospital. They're going to get treated like a relative. Give me a yes or no. Yes or no. Do you think it's unreasonable for two people that are supposed to be in love to have a healthcare proxy in place to make sure that if you get sick, I'm not going to get treated like I'm some, raggedy little hoe that you kept on the side. Like I'm going to get treated with the respect I deserve. I earned this. Right? I earned the right, even with me and my wife. I spent years with my wife before I married her. And I would have hated for something to have happened to her, and for people to be like, "Oh, well, you're just her little boyfriend. You need to get on out of here. We're gonna bring her her real relatives in." That's horrible, right? So I don't think a healthcare proxy is unreasonable. Give me a yes if you agree. I hope you agree with this. So you can get these done with a lawyer. It costs a couple dollars, but again, you're trying to impress your girlfriend by taking her out to nice restaurants and stuff. Well, impress her by taking her to see a nice lawyer and getting some documents in place that really shows that you have each other's back. You remember, love is a verb. Love is an action. It's not just a bunch of words. It's not just a feeling. It doesn't just mean I want to have sex with you. It means I want to protect you. It means I want to be there for you, whether I'm being there for you in life, and also I'm going to be there for you in death. And because I love you, I'm going to think hard about how I can make sure that you're going to be okay no matter what. That even if the relationship goes south, you're still going to be secure. I don't think that's too much to ask. But then again, maybe there are people that will call me a simp because I actually care about the woman that I'm with. Second piece is there's something called a durable power of attorney. This would have helped her in her financial situation. A durable power of attorney allows you to manage someone's financial affairs in the event that they get incapacitated. If your brain stops working right now and you're in the hospital with a coma, or God forbid, whatever happens, you're in a car wreck, you want to know, like, who's going to be able to go into the bank with a piece of paper and get access to my bank account to make sure the bills get paid on Tuesday, or to make sure that I get what I need when I'm out of my right mind. I'm not in my right mind right now. I know a daughter whose father suddenly had a coma, and they had big problems, or they couldn't even get access to anything that he had because there was no documentation in place. So that's another thing you can do. Also, there's something called a living will. Living wills outline sort of what happens to you with your medical treatment, your end of life. Like, do you want to be resuscitated, stuff like that. So if you give me that power of attorney, and you have a living will, I can go in and say, you know what, I know this woman better than anybody else, and I know for a fact that she told me over and over that she didn't want to be resuscitated if it got to this point, or whatever, right? And that kind of puts you to the head of the line, right? All these things that we think we can only do through marriage, you can actually simulate some of that with appropriate contracts and appropriate documentation. They also have things like cohabitation agreements. Cohabitation agreements give you like property rights, right? So I don't know. Again, I'm not here to judge this young lady's relationship, but what I am here to say is I think it's really strange, though, to live with somebody for a long time and then just know they could just put you out at any moment and you have nowhere to go. To me, if you are in love and you really care about each other, then to some extent, I'm going to need a protection in the event that we go bad and you start tripping. If I'm really heavily dependent on you financially, you're paying all my bills or whatever, right? And I know at any moment you could just decide you don't like me no more and you want to get rid of me. Well, I'm going to need you while you're deeply in love with me to sign a document that's going to protect me from the darker side of you. Do you understand what I mean? Right? And you see it all the time. Again, that's another kind of an example of a moral hazard issue where when we're friends and we love each other and we care about each other, everything's wonderful. But in the event that you meet somebody you like more than you like me, or I make you mad, at some point I go from being a friend to being either an enemy or a non-entity. So optimal contracting can protect you from that. So something very basic in the agreement, maybe like if we're living in this house together for so many years, well, you own a piece of the house. And again, that's a high bar for people to jump, right? If you're not financially conscious, then no one's going to jump that bar for you because you're never going to even ask them to jump the bar, right? But really, when someone's in love with you, they'll make agreements like that with you. They'll say, okay, you know what? Yeah, you're right. I want to make sure you're okay because I love you right now. You can't get those things signed or done when they hate you or don't want to be with you anymore or can't stand you anymore or they want to be with somebody else. So to me, optimal contract. This actually, believe it or not, y'all don't even know this, but when we talk about options, like in the Prime program, how we're studying stock options, all stock options are doing, and I don't want to sound like too much of a mathematician here, but this is what I see mathematically, is you have what they call different states of the world. Anybody ever heard of quantum computing? How many of y'all, give me a guess if you've heard of quantum computing. I'm not going to go too deep, I promise, but this is the God sending this signal to me. So I'm going to try to explain it in the best way I can in terms of what I see. Quantum computing kind of talks about probabilities, right? It talks about the fact that the world you live in is only one of many billions of different worlds you could be living in any moment. You know what I'm saying? Like right now, I'm living in a world where I'm holding this pen and I just dropped it. But there's other states of the world where I took the pen and I threw it at the wall. I took this pen, I shoved it in my eye. I didn't touch the pen at all. Do you understand? Those are different states of the world, right? Or there's another state of the world where right now I'm not talking to you. I'm taking a nap right now. I don't want to talk. Right. So what I mean by that is quantum physics and quantum reality talks about not the world you live in. It is a level of consciousness. Remember, in financial consciousness training, we talk about what consciousness is. It's the ability to rise into higher dimensions. Every time you rise in a dimension, you're able to see realities that may not be seen in that dimension that you were in before. This is why consciousness is so critical. This is why Black people get robbed on a regular basis because our financial consciousness is underdeveloped. We're not trained to be conscious. In media, we consume more media than anybody else in America, and media is designed to minimize what they call it, or to disrupt your prefrontal cortex, which is literally where your consciousness lives. So when you see people that are behaving in an unconscious fashion, it's because they're conscious. They've never been trained to be really conscious. There's nothing stimulating their consciousness. So consciousness means that you're not just looking at the world that's in front of you. You're looking at all the potential realities that are out there. In the Game of Thrones, again, this was a conscious show because you had to be very strategic to win the Game of Thrones, right? So there was a point, there was a little scene where one guy, he called him Littlefinger. He was like a real crafty, sneaky guy, and he's talking to the queen, and he says, you have to be able to imagine every possible scenario. He said, imagine your friends as your enemies. Imagine your enemies becoming your friends. Imagine every little thing in between, because you have to be able to see all of that in order for you to really understand how to prepare for the fact that the world is going to change. Things are always going to be changing. So effectively, consciousness means that, like, if I really love you, and I'm conscious of my love for you, then I'm going to not just think about the way things are. I'm going to think about all the different ways things could be. And if you're not conscious and you're caught up in the moment, you're caught up in how you feel right now today, and all you see is this reality, then you're going to miss everything. When the world changes, you're going to get hit like a ton of bricks. It's going to hit you like a Mack truck because you're going to be like, I never imagined him being dead. I never imagined me being in the hospital with no legs. I never imagined, I never imagined this person that I love so much hating my guts. Look at how often you see people. I always thought divorce court and stuff was so interesting because I'd be like, wow, this is amazing that these two people hate each other's guts. Like they want to destroy each other. One of them tried to kill the other one. But if I went back in time 2 years, these two were madly in love. If I went in and said, one day it's gonna get real bad, and you're gonna wanna you're gonna wanna kill her or whatever, right? They say, no, you're lying, you hating. What are you talking about? That's not true. Blah blah blah. We love each other. We're gonna be together forever. That's what happens. That's what marriage is. Marriage is this really ridiculous ceremony that it's not always ridiculous, but sometimes it's ridiculous because a marriage between two unconscious people is ridiculous to me because they're not really necessarily thinking or imagining what life could be like if things went bad. They're not even preparing for that. They're sitting there in front of all these people telling them that they're going to be together forever and that I love this person more than anything. Blah, blah, blah. And me, I'm just the weirdo in the back that's saying, gosh, when she really finds out what he's really all about, that's going to get bad. And then when he gets bored, it's going to be terrible. And then when she starts nagging him and da 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 da, and they're not ready for any of that. They're not even interested in getting therapy or counseling to prepare for those possibilities. And so I'll be like, I literally, I'm a little bit of a cynic sometimes. Like I'll be like, one of my friends got married. And I remember thinking, I mentioned to somebody, I said, I give it about maybe 9 to 12 months before stuff starts falling apart. And it did. They got married. They got divorced like a year later. And it wasn't because I was being cynical. It's because that's what happens. Like when you try your hardest to be conscious, you just kind of see stuff, And I don't say anything because I don't want to be mean. But it's like, no, you can't get caught up in the moment. So consciousness to me partly means let's talk about financial consciousness. It means you just really want to think about risk management. That's what risk assessment is. All risk is, well, you've heard about risk a lot in terms of investing. All risk is an awareness consciousness. See, that's going back to the consciousness. That's why we do consciousness training. All risk is an awareness that things could change and understanding what the catalyst could be that could cause things to change. Like I had a I had a friend in college. He was a big ladies man, right? He had all these girlfriends or whatever. And he had this sweet little girlfriend that loved him to death. She would come visit him at campus and he loved her too in a certain sense, right? His version of love was whenever she came in town, he would clean up his mess. He'd tell all the girls to stay away. He would have his room nice and clean or whatever. But when she was gone, he'd be getting drunk every day. He'd have a new girl in there every single night. And I remember, and I knew it. I saw all this, but I couldn't say anything. You know how it is when you see somebody just doing somebody dirty, but you better not say nothing because if you tell them, because they're so caught up in the moment and they're so in love, who are they gonna blame? Who are they going to blame? If you come and you tell them, you're like, look, I just have to tell you, this is what I saw. They're going to blame you. They're going to get mad at you, right? Until they see the truth. And then maybe they'll apologize, but they're not seeing the truth. They're in this naturally diluted state called love and infatuation, and everything else. So I didn't say nothing. I just saw it happen. And I remember thinking to myself, though, I said, ooh, once she finds out like what's really going on, this poor thing's gonna be devastated. And she was. I think he ended up, this is a true story. He ended up in the hospital with a drug overdose. And that's when she found out that he was using really, really hard drugs like cocaine and stuff like that. And that's when she also found out about all the women. And I remember her, and I knew her. I knew her enough where she would tell me this stuff because he was my friend. And she was talking about going to get tested for STDs because she was really scared now because blah blah blah. And so anyway, my point is to say that I think love is fascinating. Love is really interesting to me because it's such a powerful drug. And if you really study love and what happens and the chemicals that pop up in your brain when you fall in love, phenylethylamine, oxytocin, dopamine, all these chemicals really take you out of reality a little bit. And so consciousness, if you think about this, like a drunk person or a high person is not very conscious. A drunk person or a high person can be exploited or taken advantage of. And if you think about how often people get taken advantage of because they're in that fragile state of being in love, it all kind of connects, right? Or how many bad decisions we make because of either love or sex. Like I saw somebody made a joke that said, women get in trouble because of this and men get in trouble because of their penis, and so ultimately part of consciousness, in my opinion, is really having that space where you can kind of meditate and detach. enough to be able to sort of level up and look at the whole picture and make sure that you're just kind of prepared, right? So to me, little things like I'm gonna give you some more recommendations on some optimal contracting that can be done that can elevate your financial consciousness and make you ready for anything that might be in front of you. Another thing is the will, the last will and testament. I think if somebody has a document, even an informal document, that just state your wishes, like, hey, look, if something happens to me, and you can probably do that today. Like you can get on your computer and literally write a quick email to send it to some trusted people and say, this is what I want to see happen until I get a will in place. Just keep this because you might die tomorrow. I hope you don't die tomorrow. But Robin, there's Robin. Oh gosh, what's her last? I think it's Robin Smith. I know that's not her last name. But anyway, there was the Robin was a woman that was actually like part of what we do. She spoke at our convention, everything else, and her husband killed her earlier this year. And the one thing that has helped in that horrible case, as it's kind of gone on, is that she did actually have stuff in place that made sure that her daughter was at least financially protected in case something happened to her. And she had no, she never would have guessed that her husband would have actually killed her, right? So you can literally get on a computer, type something up, and it's not the same as a formal will, right? So you eventually have to get something real, but it's like a start, right? It's like evidence to say this is what you wanted, and you send it to the people that you care about, and then that's a placeholder until you get the will in place. And then trusts are great. Some sort of revocable trust or revocable living trust is a good idea because you can make the trust the beneficiary of your insurance policies and everything else, and then you put instructions on the trust. The trust is an entity. And by the way, we're actually developing the estate planning class in the Black Business School. It's long overdue. So I'll let you guys know when that's ready. So we'll have all that stuff laid out where you can learn all this stuff. But basically, trusts are a great vehicle to give you protections in the event that you're not there. The trust is like a machine where it's going to follow your instructions even after you're gone. And so if you love somebody, to me, you would put them in that trust to make sure that they're going to be taken care of. And so these are some little things you can do. I personally think that I think it's wrong for me to go through the world telling everybody they have to get married. And the reason I just won't do that is because the divorce rate is high. Divorce is very expensive. A lot of people are not just don't have the tools for a healthy marriage. Marriage requires a lot of patience. It requires like you can't. There's no space in a marriage for like a lot of arrogance and a lot of deal breakers and stuff like that. Like you have to be very flexible. You have to be very patient. You have to be willing to adjust and contort yourself in ways that you would never imagine. And you have to really be committed to the idea of staying married. That's why a lot of the longest marriages come from people like my parents. My parents have been married 50 years. And the reason my parents stayed married 50 years is not because the relationship was always romantic. It's not because they both stayed young and sexy for 50 years. It's not because everything always went right. It's not because everybody always treated everybody well. It's none of those things. You know why? The reason they stay married is because they just decided they're going to stay married. That's it. If you ask my father, like, how did you stay married 50 years? He's not going to give you a long answer. He's going to say, because I didn't get divorced. That's it. He's that type of simple, old fashioned kind of man that says if you make a commitment to do something, you do it. And for whatever reason, the definition has evolved. Right now, people say, well, it works as long as the other person's as committed as me, or as long as they don't cheat, or as long as they're And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have those rules. I think that's fine. I would just say that it goes back to mathematics. When I was explaining to you all about mathematics, that one thing about mathematics is that if you want to optimize an equation, the more constraints you put on the equation, the more conditions you put on it, the less optimal the outcome is going to be. Every time you put a condition, a constraint, you have a list, you have a deal breaker, stuff like that. That every time you do that, you're reducing the likelihood that you're going to get to the finish line because eventually one of those deal breakers is going to pop up. However, when you do simple stuff, and I'm not advocating for this, I'm just saying that it does work, it seems. Like you go back to the 1930s, divorce was highly discouraged. There were a lot of people that were very religious, and there were people who just believed that if that's your wife, that's going to be your wife. No matter how much debauchery and chaos happens in the marriage, that's my wife. That's who I picked, and that's it. Period. There's no other discussion beyond that. And now we live in a world where everyone feels like we have options. And the thing about options, this is what's interesting too, is in the world of finance, options are always a good thing. You're never worse off when you have more options. Like stock options are wonderful. You can make money from stock options, all that stuff. But in the real world, sometimes having too many options makes it harder for you to commit to the constraint. Because what options do is options, pay attention now. I hope you're getting this. This is, I'm saying, I'm going to sound a little bit deep here. I think, I don't know. I don't want to talk over anybody's head, but what options are designed to do is to release you from constraints. Do you understand? This is the thought. This is a concept I've never actually shared. I've never talked about it in this way before. But options are good. Why? Why? Well, why do you want options? Well, because options help you get out of your cage. You can break out of your prison. You can release the constraints, right? If you have more consciousness, you have more options. You have more awareness. When you have more awareness and more exposure, you're thinking about all the things you could be doing, right? So process this, right? So when you are in a marriage, and you're sitting there and you're thinking every day about all the other places you could be, all the other people you could be dating. You got, pretty girls hitting you up in your DM, or you got handsome men that are willing to say and do all the things your husband won't do. Well, in your mind, you may say, gosh, look at all these options I have. Well, the options work in the opposite direction of the constraint and the commitment. Marriage is a somewhat, to some extent, it's a commitment and it's a constraint on your behavior. It says, this is who you pick. If you want sex, you got to go to this person, right? You got to come home every day. This is your place. This is your family. So I'm not saying that that's good or bad. It's up to you to decide if you like that lifestyle or not. I like it. I chose it. But at the same time, the more you're processing all the options, like I don't sit around and say, gosh, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins. I have a little bit of money in the bank. There's a lot of women on social media. I could be doing this and doing that. I don't want to think that way. I don't want to process all that. I shut all that down because I'm trying to focus on my commitment. Do you understand? So I think you have to make a decision, right? I think that in life, generally speaking, I want you to have more options, but I think that there are actually some situations, and this defies financial theory. One thing that we're taught about options in financial theory is that options never have a negative value. You can never be worse off with more options. I don't think that's true in life. I don't think that always processing all your options, like if you're eating a salad because you want to lose weight and you've constrained yourself to eating healthy food, it doesn't really help you to sit and fantasize about cheeseburgers and ice cream while you're eating the salad. The salad is not going to look good next to a cheeseburger, right? So what do? Well, you minimize your options. You don't bring the cheeseburger home. You don't put a picture of an ice cream sundae right next to your salad. You focus on what's in front of you because you're committed to that thing. Do you understand? So that to me is commitment. And also, I will say this, going back to what we talked about earlier about sort of making plans for other people that you care about. I think the best way I can show commitment to you is to make sure that you're going to be good, to really, really protect you, and to be willing to have that conversation and prepare. And what's unfortunate about that too is that sometimes when you ask people to make a little bit more of a commitment, they're going to show you how committed they really are to you. And you may not like the answer. Like if you tell me you're going to do something and I say, well, you're going to do it and you're happy to tell me you're going to do it. Then if I say, okay, well, let's put a down payment on it, or let's take some action. And then suddenly you back away. That's going to reveal to me that you weren't as committed. You were committed to telling me what you were going to do, but you weren't committed to actually starting the process or doing it. So doing versus talking are two different levels of commitment, just like doing versus talking are two different levels of love. I can sit here and talk to you all day, get on Chat GPT and learn how to say romantic things and whisper sweet nothings in your ear all day long. But if my words are not backed by action, that I have not, I really think that that's something you might want to think about. I'm not telling you that it's bad or good. It's up to you to make that decision. But I am going to say that there's a difference between talking and action. And so in the example I gave you earlier, with that man who died and his girlfriend was, is now in jail, I think, because she took the money out of his account because she had to survive. My thought would be, if I really love you, I'm not going to put you in that situation where you've got to go break the law just to keep the commitment that I'm unable to keep because I'm incapacitated. I'm going to make sure we have a plan B, a plan C, a plan D, and a plan E. So what I do with my wife is I tell Alicia, I say, okay, if something happens to me, I've been flying airplanes and all that. If I go out one day and I don't come back, I need you to go into the black bag, and the black bag has all of our insurance information. And then also, I want you to reach out to this person, and this person, because these people are going to be able to give you access to the things that you need to make sure that the bills get paid. My goal in general is to make sure that your life is just as good if I'm gone as it was when I was here. And my belief is that a lot of people don't do that, not because they don't care or not because they don't want to do it. It's just that nobody's ever talked to them this way. Again, I think that one of our cultural deficiencies as Black people is I don't think that there's enough conversation about preparation. Because if there was more conversation about preparation, then our children wouldn't be leaving high school without knowing how to read, write, or do math, or learn how to make. They wouldn't be out in the world not knowing how to make money without begging a white man for a job. So I don't think the preparation conversation is heard very much because preparation. It's not fun. It's not lit. It's not exciting. It's not part of the culture. All that, right? It's not like hip hop promotes a culture like, well, you better make sure that that you study hard and that you learn, you become financially literate, and that you always wear a condom and that you always save your money. Yeah, they don't rap about that. They rap about living in the moment, living for today, doing whatever is fun right now, do what feels good, and that is them encouraging you to reduce your consciousness level, reduce your awareness, take yourself up from down from the third or fourth dimension down to the one or two dimensions where you're literally only making decisions that are going to optimize your life right now. You're literally living in a way where you're not even sure what next year is going to look like because you never really thought about next year. You haven't thought about the year 2028. You haven't thought about the year 2032. You're 22 years old. You're not imagining what life is going to be like when you're 37. You're not. Why would you think about that? That's 15 years down the line, right? And I personally think that we would have more preparation if we were forced to have more of those conversations. Like, okay, you're a teenager now. What's going to happen when you're 40? Like, how's this all going to play out for you? And I think understanding these things, I think is really important. And so just going back to that example with relationships, again, part of me showing you that I love you is me being very conscious of what love really looks like, what love really means. When I was talking to our 13-year-old, I said to her, I said, I'm gonna always be here for you. Even if I'm gone, even when I'm not here, I'm gonna be here. Even when I'm not here, you're gonna miss me because I won't be physically here, but oh, I'm gonna be here because I'm gonna literally program my universe so that once I'm not here, there will be structures in place, entities in place that will execute my orders as if I was here, as if I was calling the shots from heaven. So just know I ain't never gonna leave you abandoned. That's never gonna happen. Because where I come from, fathers do not abandon their children. So every time, so my personal issue might be every time I see a so-called real man that dies, and his family is out here looking desperate and raggedy because they're putting up a GoFundMe to pay for it, just to pay for his basic funeral expenses. That tells me that that man was not trained to be a very conscious man. He was not conscious of what love really looked like. But then also, I think expecting consciousness or at least connecting yourself and inviting people into your life that have a commitment to learning what consciousness actually looks like is very important. So when you sit down and you ask that person to show you love in a conscious way, like, okay, if you love me, I need us to make a plan. And then they walk away from that, or they say, I ain't got time, or I'm not interested, or you tripping, or you getting on my nerves. Well, that's telling you everything you need to know. That's not if in order for you to elevate, you need other people who's going to elevate with you. You can't be trying to elevate where you got somebody just trying to weigh you down. If I'm trying to go up to the 10,000 feet in the sky and you're 800 pounds and you're pulling me down to 50 feet off the ground, it's really hard for me to elevate. So it's a hard decision to cut that cord and let your ass just drop down to the first level one, because I'm going to rise up. And then when I rise up, though, I'm going to meet other people that are rising or people that have already gotten to that level, and we're going to live up here. This is where we're going to get an apartment in the sky. We're not going to live in the basement on the ground in the gutter of our culture. I think that there is a gutter to Black culture that I don't think is a very happy place. It's almost like living in the middle of hell because it's nothing but trauma, bad decisions, bad outcomes, chaos, drugs, death, everything negative, right? And I really don't want you to have to live there. So and I'll give you a story about it, and then I'm going to be done for today. I'll never forget this. This was 12 years ago, actually, approximately, and it was when I started to realize why it was important for me to get on here and to just talk to anybody that would listen every day. This is one of the things that actually started motivating me to do what I was doing. And I got a message from a woman that said, she said, Dr. Boyce, oh my God, I heard something you said yesterday, and I just need you to call me. I need you to call me. And normally I can't do that, right? If you tell me to call, normally can't call. But it was like a Friday night and I was bored And I was like, wow, this is interesting. It's almost reminds me of the other time where I found out about the ladies that were setting men up and drugging them and stealing their money and stuff. It was one of those times where I was like, something told me like, okay, I need to call this lady to find out what's going on, right? So I called her, and she was about 32 years old, and she was very religious, and she said that she was actually a virgin until she was 30 31 years old, because she was waiting for her husband to have sex with. And unfortunately, and the statistics show this, black women have a harder time getting married, and there's reasons, right? Mass incarceration, stuff like that. The percentage of marriage eligible black men is far lower than the percentage of marriage eligible black women. So you get a lot of people that hit the age of about between 27 and 32, where it's time to really start getting married and having kids. And the women are kind of here and the men are kind of here. Not all men, not all of them, right? A lot of men are right there with them, but a lot of men unfortunately just aren't equipped and prepared, right? And I really believe a lot of this links to depending on white men to give you jobs. They're never really going to empower you. They're going to exploit you. It's a horrible educational system, and men being distracted by stupid stuff like sports and hip hop and all that. Like, I'm going to be a rapper, I'm going to be in the NFL, and then that never materializes for 99.9% of them. So, but the women don't grow up like that. Women don't grow up giving up all their education, hoping they're going to make it to the WNBA. The women tend to just focus on like school and stuff. So when the black man and black woman hit that marriage age, the men are in a different place than the women on average. And what this does is it creates an imbalance in the number of available men to marry relative to the number of available women. When I got about 28, 29, or 30, I could throw a rock and meet a black woman that wanted to marry me. It was not hard. It was very easy. And so, and the older I got, the easier that it got, right? Because also the world, not only did the world change, but I changed. I had more money and all this other stuff, right? So, long story short, this woman had gotten to about 31 years old. She had not met her husband yet. And also, it's even harder when your pastor says the only type of man you can marry is the man who goes to church. You know what I'm talking about. There's a lady named Deb Cooper who wrote an article called "Does the Black Church Keep Women Single and Lonely?" And I kind of think that she had a point, because I don't think it's fair to say you should only marry a man who goes to church and gives money to your pastor like you do. I just think that there's a lot of good men who don't do that. So anyway, so she doesn't meet her husband, but she meets a guy that she likes. And she was like, she had a little bit of shame. She was like, Dr. Boyce, I just wanted to have sex. And I said, it's okay. Sex is not bad. And she said, I really liked him. And I started having sex with him. And I said, that's okay. I don't think I'm not judging you for that. And she said that they were sleeping together. And I think they didn't use protection. Like, she kind of told me that's part two. And then she said that you mentioned in your podcast that you should, if you're sleeping with somebody, you should say, let's go get an HIV test together. So she said that, I heard Dr. Boyce, and he said that, if you're in a relationship and you're having sex, you should go get an HIV test. So she asked the man to get an HIV test. And he said, yeah, okay, no problem, sure. And then what happened was, like she said, he never called me again. Like, he just disappeared. He just left. And so she was scared, and I don't even know the results. I don't even know what happened. I just know that at that time she was very nervous and worried about what was going to happen. And I think about that story because it was only when she became conscious and she asked him a hard question that she found out who he really was. Right? He clearly, I don't know, maybe he had HIV, maybe he didn't, but he clearly wasn't ready to engage in a conscious relationship with her, because he wasn't even ready to actually even go get tested to see if he had one of the most deadly infections that a human being can have. And if he'd infected her, he didn't even care enough to go do that. So that taught her, about him. So sometimes that's what happens when you force people to prove something that they've been saying. Some people are just going to fall off. But that's really a blessing. That's not a curse at all. That's a revelation. They're revealing who they are. You were sleeping with the enemy the whole time, and now you're finding out the emperor has no clothes. So really, my point is to say, when you talk about those conscious relationships where we really go and we really do some things we need to do, maybe protect your legal rights, stuff like that. Again, I'm not here thumping nobody over the head with a Bible, talking about gotta get married and all that. But I'm saying you have so many contracts out here that you can create with another person without getting married that will give you basic protections that any person should give you if they care about you. If I am the person that is financially dominant and I'm paying all the bills for you, and you have not, neither one of us has really sat there and said, well, what happens if I either can't or choose not to pay the bills anymore? that tells me that you're so caught up in the love that you're in right now that you're not thinking about all the things that could go wrong. I had a friend when I was younger, his mother tried to kill herself. And she was, you know how white, you go to white people's houses and sometimes they be telling you all their business. It was weird. I couldn't believe she was telling me this, and I was just a kid. But his mom told me why she thought about taking her own life. And she said it was because she met a man when she was in college, and he was going to be a dentist. And in her mind, she said, "Well, since he's going to be a dentist, I don't need to do anything. I achieved my goal." She said, "I went to college to get a husband, and I got one, and then I dropped out." And so she didn't finish school or anything. So he did. He eventually went to school. He became a dentist. They were married like 20 years. They were living a great life. They had a big old house and boats, and the kids were in private school. And then when they got in their 40s, he decided to trade in his 40 for two 20s or whatever. And he went and he started having an affair with the secretary. And next thing you know, he runs off with this 23-year-old, and she has nothing. She has no resources, no nothing. She wasn't able to, she was embarrassed. She couldn't keep her kids in school. Her resume was dusty. So she was really screwed because she had not sort of consciously thought about, nobody had thought about, like, well, what happens if this thing doesn't work out anymore? So one way to prevent that, and that's called a moral hazard problem. One way to prevent the moral hazard problem is optimal contracting. In my view, somebody who loves you should be willing to sign some sort of contract for you. And typically, and I don't care what nobody says, don't ever let anybody call you a gold digger, male or female, because you're financially conscious, because your financial situation is deeply rooted and connected to your psychological well-being. Your mental health is ruined when your finances are disrupted. So there's nothing wrong with expecting financial security and expecting to maintain that. And so I would encourage you to have those conversations and see where it goes, and then look into some options of things that can be signed to make sure, like, look, you're getting kind of old, and I know you think you're young, but you're over 50, and men die in their 50s, or they get sick in their 50s or 60s or even their 40s and 30s. So let's just make sure that we are good, so let's visualize our love. Like I can visualize my love with you when you're beautiful and I'm beautiful. I can visualize my love with you when I'm young and you're young. Let's visualize our love if I have cancer and you're coming to visit me in the hospital. Now let's visualize our love if you're in a car wreck and you're in a coma. Now let's visualize our love if I'm dead and you're still here. Now let's visualize our love. What does it look like if you're dead and I'm not and I'm here? Right? What does all that look like? And then what happens is you visit every state of the world. It's emotionally draining. It's very sad to think about these things. But then you can say, oh, wow, okay, I need to sign a document so that if you're in the hospital, I can come see you. Or, oh, yeah, we need to sign another document so that if you trip on me and you decide you hate my guts, I'm still going to be financially okay. I'm still going to own a piece of the house where I've been helping to pay the mortgage and take care of this house with you for the last 7 years. People will do these 7, 8, 9, 10-year relationships and have no legal protections whatsoever. I think that's wrong. I think that that is not ethically wrong. I think it's just strategically wrong. Do you understand? Do you follow? Do you get what I'm saying? I sound judgmental there, and that's because I am judging that. I don't think I believe in love. I think love is the most powerful force in the universe, but I don't believe love will conquer all. I don't believe that the emotion of love is as durable as we think it is, because people's emotions can change. They can. So the more protections you have in place to defend that love, the more stable, the more stability you have. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. All right. So anyway, I'm done. I'm going to, if you allow me, I'll mention a couple of things that we have going on that you can participate in. Number one, if you're not on the text list and being invited to Monday in the Morning Financial Consciousness Training, we do this every single day in the Black Business School at 10 a.m. It's totally free. Make sure you get on the text list. Text the word morning, MORNING, to 87948. Text morning to 87948. That's the first thing. Number two, so somebody type that number in the chat, 87948. The word is morning. Number two, the Get Money Fest is happening in Philadelphia this weekend, or on the 18th from 12 to 6. And if you go to getmoneyfest.com, you can participate in that. It's an art, music, and fashion festival that also has a massive financial literacy component. There's a lot of financial experts that are coming in that are literally going to talk about all the different ways to make money, elevate your business, market, whatever it is you're trying to do. It's to support independent business owners of any background. Number three, if you want to get a free access to something that we have in the Black Business School called How to Start a Business When You're Broke, I'm a believer that everybody in the Black community should think about a business or a side hustle. I think you can own a business or own a piece of a business without actually having to be an entrepreneur. So I'm not telling you to quit your job. I'm saying get multiple streams of income. So if you would like to get access to that material, How to Start a Business When You're Broke, for free, go to b1startup.com. B, the number one, startup.com, b1startup.com. That material is there. It's available for free for anybody that wants it. And then last but not least, in this consciousness training, as you guys know, today, I think we've done probably over 100 of these trainings so far because we do them every single day. If you'd like to get the archives and have them all and have access and you can share with your family, all that, feel free to become a premium member of the Money in the Morning Club, and you can do that by going to drboycedaily.com. The first 30 days are free, so that's drboycedaily.com. All right. So I hope you guys benefited from this conversation. Thank you for allowing me to share the stream of consciousness. I did not know I was going to talk about this today. I think that being in that car yesterday that I mentioned, where the woman told me she had all those strokes, I think that's what really stimulated my thinking about life. And she was 44 years old. She had two beautiful little babies with her. And I just remember thinking about how hard it must be to be a single mom with a lot of kids. Those were not her only two kids. And to have, she said, three strokes. And I said, gosh, I wish I could do more to help. I think I paid for our ride. We were in the cab together, and I was like, I'm going to pay for her. But I didn't want to be too nice because honestly, sometimes if you're too nice to a woman, it can be misinterpreted. But I just said, God, it hurts my heart, right? And I just believe deeply in a core value I share with our youngest all the time, which is that preparation is the key to success. And so to me, consciousness and awareness of all the things that can happen, all the different states of the world that you can end up living in, all the things that could go wrong, that is where you get that opportunity to kind of prepare for those things. So I don't know where she was. I don't know this lady at all, but I do remember being touched by her story. So just prepare, and make that part of your culture. Your culture does not have to be the dominant Black culture. I believe there's a lot of brainwashing and everything else that happens to our people, and it's horrible because they want to exploit us, and that's what they end up doing. But they don't have to exploit you. Just because they exploiting everybody else don't mean they got to get you too. So be conscious. A conscious person is very hard to exploit. So be smart. All right, guys. So have a good day, everybody. God bless you. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. And again, you can go to b1startup.com, be the number one startup.com to get that free training on how to start a business when you're broke. I'll see you guys later.